Is a will you marry me in your future? Or maybe you do it all over again. Hi, I'm Brian Toon with Jewelry Design Center, inviting you to come see the largest selection of Will You Marry Me in the state of Montana. The brightest diamonds of every shape and size, unique settings built to last, and skilled jewelers on site offering free sizing and maintenance for life, because that's how long we want to be your jeweler. Jewelry Design Center in Missoula, on Brooks, across from the Montana Club.
There's always a party in Montana, whether you're going to a wedding, a football game, a concert. Montana Party Bus can get you there safe and will take you anywhere in Montana. You can relax with friends in style, luxury, and safety. Western Montana based for local and regional travel within Montana borders. Montana Party Bus is great for both large and small groups with a capacity of up to 30 guests. If you want to elevate your event, call them anytime, 406-200-8096. You can also visit mtpartybus.com. Travel anywhere in Montana in style with the Montana Party Bus. Riding with Ryder back for another week, and we're into November. Mike Ryder, former Bobcat player and coach, joining us here from his he and his partner's gym there in Billings, Montana. Looks like a sweet spot, Ryder. Good job, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I can't take too much credit. I got smart business partners, and it's been a fun venture, man.
Well, that's here's the deal. If you surround yourself with a whole bunch of people that are smarter than you, you're actually the smart one. So keep it going.
I'm pretty used to that, Colter. Smarter, better looking, better, more athletic, stronger, faster. It's helpful, man.
Hey, it's good. You already hang out with, no question about it.
Yep.
We'll start. Montana State coming off a bye, so we'll start with some of the other stuff from around the Big Sky Conference. Only 3 games. Everybody had a bye. So the Big Sky's actually done a good job of staggering this stuff. It used to be that it was like just a complete crapshoot. You might get your bye week 1 of conference play, week 2, week 3, and 2 teams would be on a bye on down the line. Now, though, everybody just gets them in the middle of October, so it's a little bit more fair. I think that's a good thing. What do you think of just the way that they've sort of adjusted that?
Yeah, I think it's fair. You already hit on it. Like, boy, some of those buys, they'd come, crazy, like a week 2 or 3 buy, and you're like, oh my gosh, we went from 2-a-days and we're on, click on all cylinders. You get a little bit of momentum going, and then all of a sudden you've got to buy. I think I remember one year we had a buy in like week 2 or something. It was useless unless, given the weird circumstance where you lose somebody in fall camp and it's just a little bit, dinged up, and so it works out. But by and large, mid-October, like we're seeing now, or late October for the bye, it just makes it more fair. I think it's a good call, well done. It benefits the teams across the conference.
Well, Montana just sort of a boring game, but they shut out Northern Colorado. 3rd time in a row they shut out Northern Colorado, 24-0. Then a wild game with Sac and Idaho State. Wild because in the first half it was all sorts of offensive fireworks. Then in the second half it was all sorts of who can just control the clock or not. It came all the way down the wire. Really weird ending. Idaho State's like trying to run out the clock, then they would do a fake punt. It was totally crazy, but that's a big win for Idaho State and probably ends Sac State's playoff hopes with their 5th loss. So disappointing year for Sac so far this year. And then Idaho Washington was interesting too. A little bit of back and forth there as well. I don't know what we learned from this week other than, Montana, Idaho, 2 teams that are supposed to be playoff teams. They got it done, and they carry some momentum into November. Any takeaways from this last week in Big Sky Conference play?
Yeah, I think what you've learned from Idaho is, the ability to continue to fight, and they are fighting for a playoff shot and playoff lives. And I think they're going to, they've got the team to do that. Their quarterback was back, right? I believe. Or is he back next week?
No, he was back. Jack Lane was back.
He was.
That was the one thing that was my one takeaway from that game is that he played well. Threw for 235 and 2 touchdowns, but you could just see an increase in confidence in just the operation of the unit as a whole.
Yeah, and it turns out quarterback's important. But you get a guy back that's got confidence, and he's played. He was a starter to start the season for a reason, and so. Be interesting to see what shakes out here down the stretch, man. It seems so obvious to say, but these next 4 weeks are so key. You just start looking at these schedules, and especially these teams that are battling for Big Sky Conference championships and high C's or just playoff lives these next 4 weeks. As Bobby Houck was, always talked about winning games in November. He was always so big on talking about that. I know most coaches are that way as well because you've got to be at your best when your best is needed, and that means that injuries may have come, and you may have some late games on the road, and you throw a rivalry game in there, as it is for the Cats and the Grizz, and there's a lot to play for, but you got to be at your best when your best is needed. So excited to see how this all shakes out. There's a ton to play for here still for these top tier, top echelon teams in the Big Sky.
Yeah, that's why this weekend is so pivotal, even if the matchups aren't as sort of prime time as the ones that are coming up. Because if you're Montana State at Eastern, you're Montana at Cal Poly, or you're UC Davis hosting Northern Colorado, you got to get it done this week because then that sets up all these other things with Davis coming to Missoula, Cats going to Davis, and then of course Cats and Grizz playing each other in Bozeman.
Yeah, and road games, it's a challenge, right? And I think going to play up in Cheney is a hard thing to do, and going down to Cal Poly, that's kind of an interesting trip in itself, and the travel arrangements, and you throw in some of the interesting emotional things. You've got guys, on the Grizz roster that are seemingly from from the LA, California area, and it's like, okay, you got family up there. There's some added pressure. I kind of want to show well. There's all these things as you're working with college age kids, and you hope you prepare and you got that robot approach as you take your show on the road. But it's hard to win football games in general, and it's even harder to win them on the road. And so, places that are historically tough, like a Cheney, Washington, they're going to come with everything they've got. Aaron Best does a good job, even when they've got maybe some down years. They've got playmakers, and I saw a little bit of them last week on TV as well. And so they're going to do everything they can to stop the show for the Bobcats. And then same thing goes for Cal Poly down there playing in San Luis Obispo, which is historically just a little bit of a tougher place to play. I know they're down on talent, but still, they've shown to show a little bit of fight the last couple of weeks, and so it'll be an interesting game.
Tim Plow, the new head coach at UC Davis, who's been in and around the Big Sky for a long time, he said on this podcast series last week when I was talking to him that he did a statistical analysis of Big Sky teams on the road this century, so all the way back to 2000. Only 31% win percentage. So about 1 out of 3. That's pretty crazy, man.
And a lot of that was like, you look at those teams, some of those Grizz teams that didn't lose.
Right.
You could probably attribute a really good chunk of those teams or those wins to those teams specifically.
And
now you're looking
at those Eastern teams that ran the table several years in a row too, like the Vernon Adams teams. Like they probably got a bunch of them too. And the Cats, in their Big Sky title years. Yeah, I know if you take those three, like the three dominant programs of the last 25 years out, shoot, man, the win percentage is probably like 1 out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy to even think about that. I think that's a fascinating stat because I say this, it seems like every week, but winning on the road's hard. It just is hard. There's a lot of moving factors. People humans like comfort of their own bed and their own stadium and where they've done a lot of, they put a lot of sweat equity in there and it feels comfortable, right? And as humans, you don't always love uncomfort. And when you're on somebody else's turf, you just got to get your minds right. And so anything can happen, but it's especially tougher on the road and a couple of tough tests for the Cats and the Grizz.
Question from a listener of ours who's also happens to be the media relations director at Montana State, Bill Lambert. He's always keeping up with all of our stuff. He wants to know what you think of Montana State's secondary, particularly the corners. They got a couple seniors that are playing really well right now. What have you thought of just the secondary in general, especially the improvements in that unit from the last couple of years? And also, how do you think Simeon Woodard and John Johnson are playing right now?
Yeah, I think both those guys are really talented. Secondary as a whole has changed. I guess football in terms of how many guys you use has changed. And so the days of the Joey Thomas age where you're going to play every snap at corner, it just doesn't work that way. Or, Brad Daly or Caleb Schreiber, I think about when I was coaching, how many plays they would play without subbing. I think it's interesting because you have to have that now and in the secondary where, in my opinion, I'm a little bit biased, but like the stakes are so high, especially at the corner position, the safety position, where you're the last line of defense. They're put in a lot of one-on-one situations, so you've got to have the ability to rotate guys in. And I think MSU's done a good job of using multiple corners. I think those two in particular are talented guys. Simeon's just seen a ton of football, and boy, that helps the corner position. And he's obviously really gifted, and you love to have a senior leader there. And then the secondary, I think it hurts losing Caden. You've had guys like Drew Polidor, who's done awesome. I said this a couple weeks ago. I'm surprised his transition from corner to safety. I was a little bit skeptical in terms of his physicalness and being able to come downhill. And boy, was I wrong. But having him, Ryland's done a great job staying healthy. That's a key piece. Losing Blake was Stillwell was a little bit of a challenge. And they've done a good job at the nickel position. But all that to say, I feel like the secondary has got a lot of experience. You can tell that they play a lot of, pretty competently. If there's one thing I worry about, it's potentially a little bit of size on the outside of the corner, because they're both pretty slight guys. Not to say that they lack the physicality, but there is something. High balls, contested catches, those can be a challenge when you see some of those big body receivers. So you certainly don't want to lose anybody else in the secondary after you lose a Caden, who was able to play free safety, able to play nickel. But all in all, I feel like they're in a pretty good position. Secondary is, really, really solid, and they're going to have to show up, because the thin position at linebacker, to me, it's glaring. That's where I have most of the concern for the Bobcat defense, is at the linebacker position, probably just like everybody else. But I don't know if Greavy's coming back. Any update there?
He's back this week.
I think that's a big deal, because now you get two guys in a Greavy, as well as Neil Daly, who don't have a ton of experience, but you get to rotate those guys in a little bit and get them feeling right as you head into this tough stretch. So defensively as a whole, I think they're in a good spot. To answer Bill's question, I think the secondary is awesome. Anytime you got two good safeties like Polidor and Ort, you're in great position. Simeon does a great job. So does John Johnson. He's been a fun player to watch. But they got to stay healthy down the stretch.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Big Sky Breakdown, proudly presented by the Bobcat Collective at Montana State. The Bobcat Collective is the NIL collective that serves Montana State University student athletes. The collective has partnered with Montana State to connect fans, alumni, businesses, and local nonprofits with Montana State student athletes. Opportunities through the collective allow student athletes to earn compensation while serving the greater Montana State University community. Sign up now for memberships and enjoy automatic entry into raffles for free tickets while supporting the bright minds at Montana State. They have multiple different membership tiers, and you can also be a one-time supporter, and you can also business partner or corporate supporter. Visit bobcatcollective.com for more. Interesting too, because what you said with some of like the big time jump ball type receivers, that used to be like such a commonplace thing in the Big Sky, especially at Eastern Washington, NAU, the Grizz.
Yep.
Now though, it's like NAU has nothing but little slot guys. Eastern's best guy is awesome. Efton Chisholm's great, but he's like 5'10". The Grizz have a whole bunch of 5'9", 5'10", Fonz, Bergen, and I guess Keelan White's probably 6 feet, but he's not, he's not a Hayden Hatton or a Cooper Kupp or a Kendrick Bourne or anything like that. So it is interesting the way that that's kind of evolved, but also we're thinking long-term too, right? And I watched South Dakota State on Saturday night. South Dakota certainly has some big, long, rangy guys. South Dakota State has one. North Dakota State has one. So there's going to be guys down the road that maybe could present that challenge as well.
Yeah, and then there's just a durability factor, right? I mean, these guys are called to come up and be physical in a lot of situations, and so we've seen that from Simeon. He's been banged up a little bit in his career, and so how do you stay healthy? I think John Johnson's done a little bit too, but there's a durability issue along with just jump ball factor. And but all in all, those guys they're well coached. And Coach Shep and Coach Owens, they'll have them ready to go. And it's helpful when you've got depth because boy, you especially with the corner position, man, if you don't have somebody you trust out there, and you're out on an island, it's a bad deal. I've been there and this is not a knock to the guys I coach, but I've been there. I've been there as a corners coach, and you've got some guys that can play, but you don't have any depth, and that is an unsettling feeling heading into Saturday. I can promise you.
Yeah, they did a good job too of cultivating some depth too. I thought Vegan was good on Monday talking about, hey, he's like, we love our seniors. We just have put Powdrill in the rotation to make sure the seniors stay hungry and to get him ready. So they got 3 that they can play for sure, and then they've been trying to get other guys in there as well. I think Takari Carr is coming along for sure.
Yep.
So just another spot where they do have great depth. When it comes to offensively, what do you think of Julius Davis coming back to the fold this week?
I was at dinner at my folks' house last night. I got kicked out of my own house by my wife because she had like a book club thing, so I had to get all 3 kids out. And I was at my folks' house, and my dad and I were just talking about this too because we talk football all the time, and just talking about the importance of November and just getting a high seed and what home playoff games mean for that. Just in the playoff, it's so huge. But we started talking about the running back situation and Julius Davis, and yeah, he adds a different element. It's hard on defense when you've got 3 backs that you're playing against, and for the Cats' sake, it's like 4 backs. Where you're like, they're all a little bit different. So again, the days of like having 1 back and you've got a Taiwan Jones, albeit a very challenging, task, or a Chase Reynolds, very hard. And they get in a groove and they start feeling it, and that in itself proposes a problem. But when you've got 4 or 3 backs that they all have a little bit of a different running style, and then they're harder to tackle. You approach one guy is better out of the backfield as far as like a pass threat. It just presents some different problems for a defense. So you look at Julius, who runs really angry, but has got great explosiveness and has played quite a bit of football. You put him into the mix, it's a challenge for a defense. And so my question all the time is, because I've been on the other side where you've been hurt and then you're called to come back and play. How are you feeling? Are you game ready? Are you a little bit rusty? Naturally, you're going to have some of it, but how fast at the running back position? I've never played running back, so I don't know. How fast can you just get back on the saddle and get going? So huge weapon to add to the arsenal. How many touches are they going to get? Does that disrupt what you use with Scott Ray Humphrey, who's been dynamite down the stretch? There's a coaching element too. Who gets the touches and where? Because you want to get them all in the game, and it's a luxury for sure.
Last thing for you then, Mike Ryder here on the Big Sky Breakdown, SkylineSportsMT.com. The matchup with Eastern, Eastern certainly is nowhere close to where they were. And I think a lot of things go into that. The one thing though is last 2 years, I thought that Eastern, by the time they got to this point in the year, had certainly, you could tell since that they didn't have anything to play for, they weren't playing for anything. And now this year though, they're 2-6 coming into this game. They've only won 1 conference game. They've also navigated the hardest gauntlet of any team in the Big Sky Conference. They've already played SAC. They've already played the Grizz. They already played UC Davis. They still have to play Montana State. And they already played Idaho. So this is sort of the completion of the gauntlet of the best 5 teams in the league. But I actually thought they did fight to the end against Idaho on the road last week. Now they're back home. So I don't know. I don't know if this is a dangerous team or not. I do think they are good offensively. I've watched them live twice, and they operate well offensively. The line is good. The quarterback's really good. The Efton Chisholm's really, really good. So Montana State, though, to set everything up they have in front of them, they got to win this game. So what do you think of this matchup in Cheney?
Yeah. Gosh, they've always had such dangerous offenses, and I think their quarterback, is it Vesperis? Is that right? Am I saying that right? Yeah. So great player, and you can tell he's dynamic. That proposes problems. He's a threat with his feet. He's an undersized guy. he kind of mimics. I'm not saying he's there ability wise to a Barry Bear and a and a Adams. He's not quite that good, but it's hard on defense when a guy can run it and throw it. Period. It just adds another element to it. So I think you couple that with, and again, I'm speaking to the Bobcat defense, some linebackers who don't have as much experience. There's just a lot to that. I mean, you're asking guys, they're going to put linebackers in space. You're going to be asked to make, tough tackles in space. And that can be a tough, tall order for linebackers that don't have a ton of experience. So I'll be curious to see how they do that. I know they're still trying to run the ball as well, with Aaron Best being an offensive line guy. But look, going up there is a hard place. It's a whole lot easier than it used to be driving a bus, as we used to have to do. But now you can fly into Spokane, it's there, but it's still, they protect their home field. They still got plenty of things to play for as far as their pride and all with these next 4 games. They're going to protect the field. They always do that. I feel like the crowd does a pretty good job. So I think it's going to be a closer game than we're all anticipating. But tall order for the Cats, and I would look for it to be a tough one.
He's Mike Ryder here each week on the Mix Sky Breakdown, as well as the Skyline Sports MT YouTube page. Mikey, thanks for being here, man, and good luck with everything. Good job on the gym, and we'll talk to you next week.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.